I uncovered a sinister secret at a haunted Antarctic station. What we released will terrify you. In a town like Hawthorne, Massachusetts, folks didn't expect much to happen. But everything changed when Sarah Harris stumbled upon a series of chilling articles about a ghostly research station in Antarctica. They claimed that something sinister lurked there, something that didn't want to be found. Her heart raced as she read, every word igniting a fire of curiosity and dread. What if it's true? She thought, staring at the screen, half expecting shadows to creep out from the corners of her small, cozy apartment. That night, while Ethan, her 8-year-old son, slept fitfully, Sarah felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. Shadows danced around their quiet living room. Outside, winds howled, whispering secrets only the fallen leaves could understand. As she turned to leave the hallway, something made her freeze, a low growl that rippled through the silence. Instinct kicked in, she grabbed a kitchen knife and moved cautiously toward the sound. But it faded into the night, leaving her heart pounding like a drum. Was it just her nerves playing tricks? Or had the darkness deepened, a warning sign of chaos to come? Days passed, and the unsettling strangeness around her began manifesting into something tangible. Pet after pet disappeared. Neighboring families frantically searched for their beloved dogs, some claiming they had seen them acting oddly before vanishing. Panic rippled through Hawthorne like a storm front approaching, and each unsettling detail sparked a flare of fear in Sarah's chest. "Mom, I had that dream again." Ethan's voice brought her back. His eyes were wide, fear coating the innocence of his youth. He spoke of faceless figures prowling their home, a presence he felt, always hovering just out of sight. Each bedtime turned into a battle, and Sarah could see her sweet boy trembling with fear. "I know it's just a dream, Ethan. It can't hurt you," she offered, but inside, dread curled her stomach. What if his nightmares were tied to those articles? What if the shadows he sensed were echoing something more sinister? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. For Sarah, it was impossible to step away from the dark allure of the Antarctic station. Late-night shifts at the diner faded into a blur of grease and laughter, while her mind spiraled deeper into her investigation. A shadow loomed at the back of her thoughts. Mr. Hargrove, the town's respected principal. When she discovered his connection to the research station, it felt like stepping on a landmine. The facade of her safe community fractured. Then came the stormy night. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling her windows. Sarah stood at her kitchen sink, washing dishes, when out of the corner of her eye, she saw a figure, its fur matted, eyes empty and hollow, trembling in the light of her porch. A dog. But not just any dog. The same dog her neighbor had lost just a week back. "No," she whispered, fear curling around her like a vice. The sight of that haunted creature made her blood run cold. Would her fears consume her? Or had she already welcomed something unfathomable into their lives? As she backed away, heart pounding, she realized she was no longer the hunter in this twisted tale. She was the prey. The darkness had crept too close, and it felt like the Antarctic ice wasn't the only thing harboring secrets. The question rang in her mind like a death knell: had Hawthorne already been marked by something horrific, and were they all trapped in a game of fate they couldn't outrun? The night pressed heavy against the windows, as if the darkness itself was trying to claw its way indoors. Sarah stood frozen in the kitchen, the remnants of that ghostly dog flickering in her mind like an old film reel, an image forever branded into her memory. Her hand shook as she set the dish down, grating fear coursing through her veins. "Mom?" Ethan's voice pierced the silence. He stood in the doorway, hair tousled, eyes wide with fright. "It's back again, isn't it?" "What's back?" Sarah asked, forcing her voice to remain steady, even as her heart thundered. The urgency in his gaze made her stomach churn. The shadows. He was right, and she could feel them, the weight of unseen eyes, the gnawing sensation that something was watching, waiting. Sarah swept up Ethan and pulled him close, feeling the warmth of his small body against hers, providing a flimsy protection against the malignant force creeping closer. She needed to act. She had to protect him, but how? Moments later, they sat on the couch together, blanketed in darkness. A weak amber light glowed from the lamp beside them. She forced herself to breathe, to reassure him, but inside, her thoughts twisted with dread. Everything was unraveling. Despite her attempts to outwardly reassure him, worry gnawed at her, a desperate search for answers that seemed to lead nowhere. In that tremulous silence, a noise broke through the air, a soft scratching, then a low whimper. Both of their heads snapped toward the window. The spectral dog's reappearance flashed in Sarah's mind, her heart racing anew. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Ethan nodded, clutching her shirt. No more pretending it was just a dream, that sound was real. She needed to see. Maybe it was just the wind or a stray cat. With gritted teeth, she edged towards the window, heart hammering. As she peered out, darkness swallowed any hope of warmth from the streetlight. Just then, a shadow slithered past the glass, quick, fluid. Her breath hitched in a strangled gasp. It wasn't just the dog, it was something worse. The silhouette morphed into a vague figure, just outside her vision. Its outline shifted, twitching unsettlingly as if it hungered for the night. "Mom, please," Ethan's voice faltered, fear piercing through the fabric of her resolve. The scratching grew louder now, desperate. The figure pressed closer to the window, the pale moonlight just catching the glimmer of eyes that reflected an insatiable hunger. Sarah stumbled back, the knife slipping from her fingers. "Stay close, Ethan," she commanded, her voice shaking. Before she could gather herself, the television flickered to life, static hissing fiercely like a swarm of angry insects. Messages scrolled across the screen, warnings of things awakening in the dark, of secrets long buried. Sarah's blood ran cold, then the scratching intensified, now at the door, layered with guttural growls that made her skin crawl. She bolted to the front door, locked tight, the sound pounding in her ears like the drums of war. Had they brought something back? Had that dormant evil seeped into their lives, bearing its fangs? A crash echoed through the house as the living room lights flickered, plunging them into blackness. "Mom!" Ethan whined, breathing fast. The poor child was a bundle of nerves, mirroring her own internal chaos. "Ethan, we need to hide," she shouted. Grabbed him by the hand, and they stumbled toward the back of the house, each step echoing the dread she felt clawing at her mind. The growling intensified, turning into a relentless roar as they fumbled into the pantry, hoping against hope to disappear into the shadows. Sarah pressed her finger to her lips, urging silence. Would they make it through the night? Were the articles true? The thing haunting the Antarctic had now seeped its way into their lives, and it was hungry. Then, without warning, the door shattered open. Wood splintered as a massive figure filled the space, its breath rancid, the darkness swirling with an energy that suffocated. As the creature's eyes locked onto theirs, raw terror washed over them, freezing them in place. There was no escaping now, and in that moment, the question loomed larger than life: what had they unleashed from the depths, and could they survive its wrath? Just as the thing lunged, Sarah closed her eyes, her heart racing once more. What would happen next? The answer waited in the dark. The pantry felt impossibly small, the air thick as dread settled in the cramped space. Sarah's hands trembled as she squeezed Ethan tighter against her side. He was a small anchor in the storm of terror swirling around them. The growling roared louder, echoing through the hollow of the house, vibrating Sarah's chest as if the walls themselves were crying out. With a sudden jolt, the creature's claws scraped against the threshold, a cacophony of splintering wood and snapping nails. Sarah instinctively shoved Ethan down. Stay quiet. She murmured, her heart pounding louder than the fear echoing in her ears. Every second felt like an eternity, each breath a whisper of impending doom. Seconds passed, an agonizing stretch of silence that clawed at her sanity. Then, a breathless snarl pierced the stillness. A low growl trailed close to the pantry door, followed by an unsettling silence that made her skin crawl. Would the monster just wait? A flicker of motion. Shadows danced outside the pantry door, swaying in rhythmic pulses as if something monstrous paced the entryway. Sarah could feel the heat radiating from Ethan, could hear whispers escaping his parted lips, prayers, maybe. She closed her eyes tightly, summoning every ounce of courage. Mom, what if it finds us? His voice was small, barely a whisper. Her heart ached for his innocence, for the way darkness had suddenly clouded their lives. It won't, Ethan. I promise, she lied. She had no idea if it was true, but what else could she do? A crash echoed, shattering the fragile calm. The creature was inside the house. Sarah dared to peek through a gap between the pantry door and its frame. The silhouette flowed like liquid night, powerful and relentless, prowling with a predatory grace. The lamp flickered back to life, illuminating its grotesque features for just a heartbeat, a face twisted and mismatched, half resembling the ghostly dog, and half something far more nightmarish. A sickening realization washed over her: they were not safe here. If it could get through the front door, the pantry was no sanctuary. The sobering thought ignited a new panic, a jolt in her gut that screamed for survival. Ethan, we need to go now. She whispered urgently. She pushed the door open softly, heart racing, readying herself to bolt into the living room. Just as she stepped out, the room exploded into chaos. The heavy shadow lunged at them, its breath hot on her face. They darted to the right, the growls morphing into howls that rattled her bones. Adrenaline surged as they stumbled into the living room, the stark light flickering wildly as the air around them thickened with a palpable darkness. The back door! She shouted, pushing past furniture, using what little light she had to navigate. Ethan followed closely, his smaller body almost sticking to hers. With one leap, she reached the back door. It was locked, there was no time. Her heart sank. She turned toward the living room window, it was their only way out. Hold on! She cried, lifting it just enough for them to squeeze through. Then came the crash again, a surge of noise that threatened to drown her out. She pushed Ethan through the window and crawled after him, hands scraping against the glass as she threw herself outside. They hit the ground hard, the night cold and unyielding beneath them. They scrambled to their feet, breathless. But the night was suffocated by shadows. A few feet away, the creature loomed, impossibly large, letting out a growl that reverberated through the air like thunder. No! Sarah shouted, instinct kicking in. She grabbed Ethan's hand, forcing them both to sprint toward the trees lining their yard. The darkness hugged them, enveloping them in an unsettling cloak of safety. It couldn't see them as long as they stayed within the shadows. Where do we go? Ethan panted, his small legs struggling to keep up. Anywhere but here, she replied, glancing back at the ominous figure emerging from the house's ruins. Would it follow? Did it know they were close? As they plunged deeper into the woods, the wind whispered through the branches. And Sarah's heart raced faster with each step. The flesh of her legs burned from the cold, but it was nothing compared to the icy grip of fear tightening around her chest. Then she heard it, a moan behind them. An unearthly, echoing cry that sent shivers down her spine. They had disturbed something ancient and hungry, and now it was loose in the world. And it wouldn't stop until it found them. Suddenly, flickers of orange light lit beside them, illuminating the path ahead. Sarah halted, eyes wide with disbelief. Small campfires, like beacons in the night. There were people, figures moving, shadows cast by the flames. Ethan, stay close. We have to reach them before it gets us. She urged, desperation clawing at her throat, but as they rushed toward the warmth, the chilling howl erupted from behind, echoing through the trees, hinting at the horrors that still lurked in the dark. They were not safe yet. Could anyone save them from what hunted in the night? Did they truly escape its wrath, or was this only the beginning? The campfires flickered like desperate stars against the encroaching darkness, casting wild shadows that danced among the trees. Sarah pulled Ethan close, her heart hammering against her ribs. The warmth from the flames was tantalizing, but she couldn't let her guard down. She felt the unrelenting presence of the creature lurking beyond the tree-line, its dark form a haunting memory held in the recesses of her mind. As they approached, the figures around the fires came into view. A group of weary souls, faces twisted in a mix of confusion and fear, stared at them with wide eyes. "Help us!" Sarah shouted, her voice cracking, desperation spilling over as the howl echoed again. Closer this time, the nearest figure, an older woman with eyes that glimmered like polished stones, stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "What happened to you?" she asked, her voice calm but urgent. No time for explanations. "There's something in the woods, it's hunting us," Sarah gasped, dragging Ethan closer. "You have to protect us." The woman exchanged glances with another man, whose hardened expression revealed he had seen too much. "We know," he replied, clenching his jaw. "It's been stalking the area. We've heard the howls." Panic surged inside Sarah again. "Why haven't you left?" The question escaped her lips before she could hold it back. "You don't understand," the man said, his eyes narrowing. "It's not just out here, it gets into your mind. It makes you see things. You think you're running, but you could be running right into its trap." The night grew quiet for an agonizing moment, the crackle of the fires filling the air where the howls had been. Sarah felt Ethan's small hands grip her shirt tighter. The weight of her fear settled heavy in her chest. "Follow us," the woman finally urged, stepping back to reveal a battered old tent dappled in weak light. "You'll be safer inside. We have weapons, fire, and we can form a guard." Reluctantly, Sarah led Ethan toward the tent, glancing over her shoulder. The trees swayed ominously, shadows shifting as if the creature were lurking just beyond their reach. Inside, the tent was cramped, filled with miscellaneous items, rations, torn blankets, and an assortment of mismatched gear. As they settled down, Sarah felt the collective tension of the group. Their eyes darted toward the tent entrance, as if they could already sense the dark figure outside waiting, watching. "What else do you know about it?" she pressed, trying to quell the rising tide of fear within her. "How do we stop it?" The man hesitated. "It thrives on fear. The more you panic, the stronger it becomes. But what it feeds on," his voice faltered, "is something far more sinister." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, a chill running down her spine. "We think it draws its power from those it drives insane, makes you see visions of your worst fears. People lose their minds out there, and that energy, it's what keeps it alive." He paused, looking at her, his gaze penetrating. "And sometimes, it can make you turn against those you love the most." Horrified, Sarah felt a creeping dread coil tighter around her heart. The shadows outside seemed to pulse in rhythm with the chilling realization. Then came the howl again, louder than before, cutting through the night like a razor blade and reverberating through the very core of her being. The group instinctively drew closer, whispering frantic prayers as they peered into the darkness. "Stay calm, maintain the fire," the woman shouted, courage slipping through her voice like smoke. "It's coming." The wind grew colder, rushing through the trees, carrying a stench like decay and despair. They could all feel it, the weight of its presence, the urgency of adrenaline racing through their veins, but then Sarah noticed something flicker across the faces of those gathered around her, a strange look that sent ripples of unease through her. Was it fear or something else, something darker? Before she could ask, there was a loud crash outside. The door of the tent bulged as a shadow loomed, stretching like a dark cloud. The atmosphere twisted, she realized. The faces around her changed subtly, their features shifting as if something deep inside was awakening. "Ethan!" She screamed, spinning to locate her son amid the chaos, but the shadows closed in, and she couldn't see him. "Something is wrong," she called out, shaking the others, but they were mesmerized, gazes locked onto the flapping fabric of the tent. With a thundering crash, the tent erupted into chaos. Shadows danced wildly, and the whispered terror filled the air. "Get him away from it!" Sarah yelled, feeling a dreadful urge to flee but unable to move. Panic rose like a flood, and as she searched the faces of the group, she felt a growing dread. What if they were not the hunted but the hunters? What if this was just the beginning of something far worse? As the howl burst forth again, louder than ever, it struck her, the true horror was not outside, lurking in the dark, but right beside her, and they might already be too late. What if they didn't just have to escape the creature, but also save Ethan from the evil seeping into their minds? The shadows surged, colliding like waves against the distorted fabric of the tent. Sarah's heart raced as she fought against the panic that threatened to engulf her. She felt it creeping in, that insidious whisper of fear clawing at her mind. She had to find Ethan. "Ethan!" She screamed again, her voice echoing back at her from the dark corners of the tent. The flickering flames threw bizarre shapes against the canvas, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought she saw his tiny silhouette, obscured and twisted, meld into the darkness. Outside, the howl morphed into something primal, something that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't just a warning, it was a summons. The campfire flickered, casting a pale light on the faces surrounding her, a motley collection of wide eyes and gaping mouths frozen in terror as they absorbed the magnitude of what was unfolding. "Stay together. Keep the fires lit," the woman shouted, her authority wavering under the weight of uncertainty, but Sarah could barely hear her. The growing chaos masked any sense of order. The woman's command turned into a frenzy of whispers and gasps, each desperate sound mingling with the shrill cries that echoed through the woods. The other campers' faces began to shift under the flickering light. It was subtle at first, a tightening of jaws, a narrowing of eyes, as if some ancient instinct was awakening. They glanced at one another with an unsettling familiarity, an acknowledgement of terror that seemed to bind them together in the strangest of ways. "Ethan!" She staggered forward, weaving between tall figures. No one seemed to respond to her frantic call. The air thickened as if the darkness was reaching inside, yanking at their souls, savoring their terror. Just then, a figure broke through the tent flaps, tall and cloaked in shadows, its eyes glimmering like shards of glass. It leaned into the flickering light, an image caught between nightmare and reality. The chilling howl that followed curled into Sarah's ears, sending a wave of icy dread coursing through her veins. "Get away from my son!" Sarah shrieked, though she barely knew where he was. The creature's breath hung heavy in the air, dripping with decay and despair, wrapping around her like chains. The others remained rooted to the ground, faces slack with fear, whispering fragmented phrases that sent electric shocks of dread coursing through her. "It makes us see the ones we love." Her stomach flipped as she struggled to hold her ground. Ethan's name echoed again in her mind, a lifeline clinging just out of reach. "I want to let you take him," she shouted defiantly, a hollow challenge against the darkness that tightened its grip on her heart. The creature advanced, its form shifting, gray tendrils of despair spilling from its shadowy core, twisting around the frightened campers. Their eyes glazed over, reflecting fear and something familiar, something sinister. Were they losing themselves? Sarah stumbled back, her breath hitching as those faces, once allies, began tattooing her memory with horror. "It's in their heads," she gasped, piecing those words together like a chilling riddle. The truth cracked through the haze: they weren't merely afraid, they had become part of the nightmare. It struck her, was the creature claiming them one by one? What if they could see something she couldn't? What if it had already started to pick apart their sanity, turning them into agents of its terror? "Ethan!" she shouted one last time, her voice barely a whisper under the weight of despair. But then, a small voice broke through the dark, fragile yet fierce. "Mom?" Hope ignited within her chest, cutting through the suffocating dread. Ethan. As she turned, the others began to shift, blinking back the glaze of fear that clouded their minds. A fleeting moment of clarity flickered across their faces, licking at the edge of despair. Hope surged, but quickly tangled with dread. What if this was the moment it all unraveled? "Stay with me," she cried, but the shadows sharpened around them, stretching ever closer. The scream of the creature built again, crawling through the air and melded with chaos as everything spiraled out of control. The flickering campfires sputtered, and she realized with horror, they were not the only ones hunting, and the shadows were closing in fast. Then, everything went silent. What were the others willing to give up to survive? Would they fend off not just the creature, but also the darkness creeping into their minds? Could they save Ethan, or would she lose him forever to the terror that was also awakening in her? The silence was deafening. Sarah's heart drummed a frantic tattoo against her ribs while the shadows coiled, waiting with an insatiable hunger. She pushed through her panic, eyes scanning the tent, searching desperately for her son. "Ethan," she breathed, softer this time, the name like a lifeline. What if he was all alone? The thought ripped through her, visceral and sharp. Behind her, the campers quietly convulsed, some murmuring incoherently, others locked in fragile clarity that quickly dulled. The creature took a step closer, eyes gleaming, a predatory glint that promised despair. Sarah clenched her fists, fighting the instinct to flee. For Ethan, she had to keep fighting. "Ethan!" she yelled again, voice trembling. A crack of rustling splintered her focus, drawing her to the corner of the tent where a low sound, a whimper, slithered into her ears. "Mom!" The voice was smaller, softer, yet laced with the intensity that only a child can possess. "There!" Sarah pushed through the throng of zombie-like campers, blindly clawing at the air, desperation urging her movements. "Ethan!" An urgency pulled her forward. There, at the far edge of the tent, a dark bundle shivered. Sarah flung herself down, collapsing onto the ground. "Ethan!" "It's me, Mom." She reached for the trembling form, hands shaking with a mix of relief and terror. The shadows around pulsed, as if straining to consume the light. Mom," he stuttered, peering up at her with wide, pleading eyes. His face was smeared with the remnants of fear, the ghost of something worse lurking behind those innocent cheeks. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Sarah searched his body, desperately looking for any sign that he'd been touched by the creature's darkness. "No," he whispered, shaking his head, "but they want me to join them." Ethan's gaze drifted beyond her, eyes glazing with a spectral faraway look. "They make me see things, Mom, bad things." Sarah felt her heart drop. "What do you mean? Who makes you see things?" "The others." He shuddered again. "They're not here. They're gone, and they're so sad." His voice cracked, eyes too old for such a young child, haunted by ghosts unseen. Suddenly, the tent seemed to constrict, breaths trapped in a suffocating embrace. Faces turned towards her, expressionless eyes reflecting the dim firelight, mouths forming unspoken words, a chorus to the despair filling the space. "No!" Sarah screamed, pulling Ethan closer. "Stay with me, don't look at them. Don't listen." She felt the shadows swirl around her, a choking darkness tightening its grip. Mom, I can see them." Ethan whimpered, tears streaking his cheeks. "They're reaching for me." In that instant, Sarah felt the icy fingers of dread wrap around her spine. A fusion of terror and sorrow erupted as the campers began to wail, their voices rising in an anguished symphony of despair. Join us," the chorus built, swelling until it echoed like a thunderstorm crashing against her skull. "No!" Sarah clutched Ethan, but his small body began to quiver as he fought against her hold, his innocent gaze lost in the depths of the shadows. The wailing voices danced around them, an intoxicating invitation wrapped in shattered memories. Desperation ignited the air, and she couldn't breathe. The shadows were closing in, claiming her, burning with an unquenchable hunger. She felt Ethan slipping, felt that bond fraying, ready to unravel. "Mom!" Ethan's voice echoed in her mind, vivid and pure yet layered with shadows seeped in anguish, drowning in terror. And then, abruptly, silence wrapped around them once more. It hung heavy, thick with darkness, and the whispers turned to a haunting chant, their meaning slipping through her fingers like sand. Sarah's pulse thundered as she stared into the terrifying void, fighting to hold on to reality. How long until she, too, became just another echo in the shadows? In that suffocating dark, an uneasy truth dawned: if they didn't escape, if she didn't fight like hell, they would lose everything. The shrieks rose again, piercing the heavy silence like nails on a chalkboard. What was the price of survival? Would she save her son, or would they both be swallowed whole by the dark? The tension snapped, a promise of terror echoed just beyond the fabric of the tent. They were not merely battling the creature, the shadows were awakening forces in their very minds. As the haunting chant grew louder, Sarah knew that the choices ahead would either seal their fate or set them free. Would her love be enough to fight the darkness? And then it happened. A sharp cry rang out, cutting through the midst of chaos. A revelation from the depths of the shadows surged forth. Join us, it beckoned, but who were they truly inviting? And what grip did the darkness have on Ethan? Ethan's eyes transformed, innocence shattered and replaced by a darkness that seemed to surge from somewhere deep within him. "They know you're here, Mom. They don't want you, they want me." His voice faded, a whisper swallowed by the gathering storm of despair surrounding them. "No!" Sarah shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. She felt the walls closing in, the fabric of the tent tightening like a noose. Panic surged. If she didn't act, the shadows would take Ethan like they had taken the others. The whispers echoed louder, a sinister symphony rising around her. "Look at me, Ethan." She gripped his shoulders, forcing him to focus, to tether himself to her. "You're not joining them. You're with me. Remember when we went to the fair? The lights and the rides, and how we laughed together?" Her voice trembled, straining against the gathering darkness. He blinked, confusion flickering in his eyes. For a split second, the weight of the shadows lightened, the whispers retreated, and she caught a glimpse of the boy she knew. "The fair," he murmured, but the darkness shifted like a living thing, eager to reclaim him. The campers around them moaned, an amorphous mass of lament. They began to sway, drawn by unseen forces, and Sarah saw their eyes a hollow void, a chilling reflection of what she feared awaited her precious boy. She felt her blood run cold. This wasn't a simple hallucination. Something more sinister thrived in the shadows, a predator lurking, threatening to tear apart the fragility of her world. "Get away from him!" Sarah yelled, rage boiling in her veins. Nothing would take Ethan. She surged to her feet, dragging him up with her, heart racing. The shadows writhed, thick and hungry, as if aware of her defiance. Desperation gnawed at her like a feral beast, urging her to fight. "Follow me," she barked, and, squeezing his hand tightly, Sarah turned to the tent's entrance, where a small sliver of light beckoned through the fabric, a promise of escape. As they pushed through the throng of staggering campers, their voices grew frantic. Join us," the chant morphed into a roar, grasping at her sanity, shaking her resolve. "Don't listen," she cried, feeling Ethan's grip weaken. "Just hold on to me." But then he stopped, eyes going wide. "Mom, they're scared." "No. They're not scared," Sarah snapped, panic twisting her stomach. "They're lost. We have to get out now." With every step, the shadows clawed at them, the floor of the tent pulsating like a living heart, determined to keep them from breaking free. A sinister chill wrapped around Sarah's ankles, trying to trip her, pull her back into the quagmire of despair. She fell to her knees, gritting her teeth against the darkness swarming around them. "Mom!" Ethan's voice, now tinged with terror, brought her back. His small body trembled against the tide of despair surrounding them, and she glanced into his eyes. Her heart jumped. "Fight, Ethan," she urged, her breath hitching. "You are strong. Remember the stories I read to you? We always save the day." But before he could respond, the shadows surged, arching around them like tendrils. They thickened, a cocoon of blackness hoping to devour them whole. Just ahead, the entrance seemed to warp, a flickering mirage of hope stuttering against the abyss. "Join us, join us, join us," the chorus swelled anew, drowning out her voice. The campers' faces twisted, sorrow and rage pooled in their eyes. Despair echoed back at her with every beat of her heart. "Ethan!" Sarah shouted, willing her son to remember, to resist the pull of the whispers. "You have to. We can't let them win." Suddenly, the air pulsed. A blinding light exploded from the entrance, cutting through the shadows, causing Sarah's heart to race. "Now!" she yelled, grabbing Ethan's hand and plunging toward the opening, the warmth of light promising safety. But as they moved closer, a shadow lunged, a flash of ink-black claw striking out. It gripped her son's other arm, pulling him backward, desperate to reclaim its prey. "No!" Sarah shouted, and with every ounce of strength and love, she pulled Ethan toward her, igniting a fierce determination. Would she dare sacrifice her own safety to save him? The struggle intensified. A harrowing decision lay before her, a choice drenched in terror. What sacrifice would she have to make to free her son from the clutches of the shadows? And as the darkness threatened to envelop them both, she realized that the true face of terror was not merely outside but within herself, ready to emerge. As Ethan screamed, the pull of shadows intensified, urging her to let go, to join their haunting whisper. Would Sarah choose to fight or succumb? The choice was hers alone. The shriek echoed in Sarah's ears, mixing with the relentless chant that clawed at her mind, "Join us, join us." This was no mere struggle against some external force. The true horror loomed inside her like an ancient, festering wound. "No!" She fought harder, her fingers digging into Ethan's arm. "We're not giving up. You're my light." But the shadows didn't relent. They twisted and wound around them, gathering strength from the fear radiating from Sarah's body. White-hot desperation clawed at her heart, punctuating the absolute darkness pressing in on all sides. The campers around them convulsed, a mass of pained faces, begging her with hollow eyes that were all too familiar in their despair. "Mom, I can't," Ethan sobbed, eyes filling with tears that shimmered, both innocent and understanding. Each word cut deeper, anchoring the darkness to her. "No!" she screamed, every fiber of her being urging her to act. She drew in a breath, her heart pounding, knowing she couldn't let go. Not now. Not ever. "Ethan, remember the stories. Remember what we said about heroes." His eyes flickered, momentarily lighting up with a sliver of hope. "But what if I become one of them?" The shadows pulsed closer, and she felt the wall of darkness preparing to consume them, shadows coiling like serpents around their legs. Sarah's mind raced as she faltered for a moment, overwhelmed by the weight of his question. She had always spun tales of bravery, heroes who persevered against daunting odds and triumphed in the end. Yet, standing there, faced with an insurmountable evil, she realized how fragile those narratives had been. "No," she repeated, pulling him closer. "You are not one of them. Fight it. Fight with me." Ethan's face twisted in anguish. "I'm scared, Mom." The tendrils whispered promises of freedom and escape, each caress a reminder of the bond they were losing. Sarah's blood ran cold as she glanced at the campers, their shapes blurring into indistinct forms drowned in sorrow, dragging Ethan into a darkness that threatened to swallow the light from him. Suddenly, a monstrous roar erupted from the thicket of shadows. It echoed, a twisted amalgam of grief and anger intertwining, and something shifted. Energy pulsed around them, solidifying as a cold gust of wind swept through. The shadows hesitated, recoiling from the icy breath of that unseen force. Now, Ethan. We have to move. She didn't know how, but the wind offered them a chance, a momentary respite amid the chaos. With a renewed sense of urgency, she hurled herself toward the light. The promise of escape shimmered ahead, though fears seeped through her resolve, urging her to falter. What would happen to Ethan if she couldn't save him? Her heart sank under the weight of uncertainty. As they barreled into the light, the grasp of shadows tightened around him, an unyielding grip that seemed to quiet the storm within them both. Mom! I can't hold on. His voice, now a mere plea, struck her heart like a dagger. Stay with me. Desperation surged through her strength. I want to let you go. We are stronger together. The words tasted bitter on her tongue, a promise and a prayer entwined in turmoil. Strengthening her grip around Ethan's arms, she felt the tremors of both their bodies vibrating against the relentless dark. Suddenly, the light flared brighter, casting silhouettes of their attackers away. But just as quickly, shadows resumed their fierce advance, angry and emboldened. Join us, the chorus roared back, infused with a fresh urgency. In that moment, Sarah glimpsed a clarity, a revelation unfolding from the darkest corners of her mind. Perhaps the shadows fed off her doubts, feeding on the uncertainties of love, of strength. Perhaps it was the doubt itself that would allow Ethan to slip away. The ground shook, echoing, "Join us," and the line between fighting for her son and succumbing began to blur. Ethan. In a bold maneuver, she turned to face the tide of shadows, ready to cast her fears into the fray. I will fight for you. Together, we'll defy them. Yet, as she summoned the last vestige of strength, realization sank deep into her, a sinister intuition shuddering at the edge of her consciousness. What if she, too, was being lured into their embrace? And as the shadows twisted, solidifying into monstrous shapes before them, Sarah's heart raced. What if the fight against darkness meant letting a different shadow darker than anything outside emerge from within? As the nightmare closed in, she felt Ethan's hand slipping away. Would she have to take his place to save him? The choice lurked on the edge of the oncoming storm. Would she go down fighting, or would she succumb? The ground beneath Sarah trembled violently as the dark forces circled closer, eager to consume them whole. She glanced at Ethan, his face gleamed with tears reflecting the fading light. This was not just about saving him anymore, it was a battle against the shadows that sought to chip away at her very essence. Hold on, baby. Hold on. She shouted, her voice strained and breaking. The shadows flickered like twisting flames, their whispers taunting her. Join us, they echoed through the darkness, seductive and relentless. Ethan's eyes widened in fear, and she felt her heart being lacerated with every trembling look he gave her. How was she supposed to save him when her own resolve felt like it was disintegrating? A whisper in her mind slithered through the chaos. What if she couldn't win? What if this was the end of their story? But something within her flared with desperation and defiance. No. She thought fiercely. They would not end like this. Heroes fought against impossible odds. She flung her head back, embracing the cold rush of bravery that surged inside her. Together. We can do this together. She screamed again, clutching him tighter. She willed her love for him to flood the air, the warmth of their bond pushing against the chill of the shadows. With every passing moment, she could feel Ethan's will waning. The grip on his arm grew weaker, and as she glanced down, she was horrified to see shadows crawling up his body, seeking to bind him in dark chains. No! Panic clawed at her throat as she pulled him closer, eyes darting around them, searching for any sign of salvation. The light around them flickered, a dying ember amidst the consuming dark, and it felt like the world was collapsing. Ethan! We're not done. She yelled, tapping into every ounce of strength she possessed. Think of the stars. Your dreams. We can't let them take you. But the shadows laughed, a chilling sound that twisted through her like ice. He is ours. Join us, they beckoned, the chorus entwining with the very fabric of her soul. For a split second, doubt pierced through her, sharp and biting. She felt the pressure pushing down, a grotesque mixture of hope and resignation. Was she merely prolonging the inevitable? Yet, the moment she hesitated, a surge of energy crackled. The ground beneath them pulsed with a strange vitality, like the heartbeat of something ancient and powerful. The shadows recoiled momentarily, confused. Now! She seized the moment, pulling Ethan with all her might forward. Their feet faltered, sliding along a muddy expanse that seemed to breathe beneath them. And then, the light surged back, illuminating their path in a violent flash. Revealed in that blinding moment were the true faces of their attackers, twisted spirits with hollow eyes and mouths gaping wide in a silent scream. Ethan gasped as the grip on him shattered, the shadows writhing in agony. "I can't see!" he cried, eyes shut tight against the blinding light. "Look at me!" Sarah urged, desperate to fill him with courage. "You have to see. We're almost there." Struggling against the weight of desperation, she felt the shadows snarling, fury building, their whispers turning to shrieks of rage. Her heart thundered in her chest, vibrating with the dread of what would come next. "Join us!" The ground trembled with their battle cry, shaking the very foundation beneath their feet. Just as the fabric of darkness flickered, she glimpsed something. A figure moved within the shadows, a woman, her face a mask of pain and sorrow, fingers outstretched toward them. It was a face that resembled Sarah's, twisted, hollow. Bile rose in Sarah's throat as realization struck. This was not a random encounter, these shadows bore witness to her deepest fears. They were manifestations of her own uncertainty and despair. "Stay close, Ethan!" she shouted, a surge of unease coursing through her as she faced this malevolent reflection. The ground shook again, louder this time, and her resolve wavered. With a scream that pierced the darkness, the woman lunged forward, pulling shadows with her. Sarah's breath quickened as she grasped Ethan's hand tighter, caught between two worlds, one of shadow and one bathed in light. How could she fight something that came from within? In that moment, as the shadows laughed and the woman's eyes reached out for her soul, Sarah felt another truth emerge, a cruel truth, hiding in the dark. What if the battle she fought wasn't just for Ethan but a fight for her very soul? As the shadows surged, heralded by howls of desire and rage, the choice became clearer. Would she surrender to that darkness? Or would she carve her own path through the impending chaos? And as the last vestiges of light dimmed, Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, leaving her on the precipice of choice. Who was she, really? And what lay hidden in her darkness? The shadows swirled, closing in on Sarah and Ethan, an oppressive weight pressing against her chest. Heart racing, her thoughts flickered to every moment of joy they had shared, the laughter at the fair, the warmth of summer afternoons spent under the sun, the way Ethan's small hand fit perfectly in hers. Those memories surged through the storm of chaos, igniting her spirit. "Ethan!" she gasped, gripping his shoulders with fierce intensity. "You're my light. Remember that. Nothing can take you away from me." The image of him, bright and innocent, bolstered her resolve. The darkness clawed at her mind, but she couldn't allow it to win. Not now. Not ever. "Mom. I'm scared." Ethan's voice trembled, the fear etched in his eyes. What if I become one of them?" "No." Sarah denied vehemently. "You're not like them. You're my brave boy. Fight it. I believe in you." Panic surged as his features faded into worry, blending with the despair curling at the edges of the shadows. The echoes of join us clawed at her sanity, yet every chant solidified her determination. As the shadows surged closer, Sarah hesitated for only a breath before launching forward. The light beckoned, a sanctuary rising in the tumult of darkness. "Stick close," she commanded, wrapping her arms around Ethan and dashing toward the flame that danced ahead. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the glimmer as they clawed at the air, their anguished howls a storm of fury behind them. With each step, the whispers grew frantic, feeding off the vibrant love she held for her son, hungry to drown them in despair. "Run!" She fell to her knees, dragging Ethan with her past the threshold of darkness, almost spilling into the flickering warmth of the fire. In that moment, she saw them, the shapes of shading forms breaking free from the depths of their own turmoil. The campers, they were cursed, but they could still find hope. "Gather around," she urged, lifting Ethan from the ground, pushing toward the other campers who seemed lost yet yearning for a flicker of light. "We can fight back." Their expressions twisted in confusion at first, eyes glazed and haunted, but slowly, one by one, the fog lifted. She could see them remembering snippets of laughter, sunlit days, and moments that felt alive. The essence of humanity began rekindling the flickering flames of their spirits, fighting against those wretched shadows. "Listen," Sarah called, voice piercing through the noise. "They want us to fear. We can't let them win. We are more than our worst moments. We are love. We are light. We are brave." Their faces transformed, wavering, flickering against the overwhelming darkness. One man stepped forward, his expression fierce yet tormented. "We have to believe in each other. Together, we can break free." His words resonated within the group as they began to shift, joining hands around the fire, forming a circle. "Hold tightly," Sarah shouted, wrapping her fingers around Ethan's, the boy's warmth sending electric pulses of courage surging through her. The shadows circled closer, howling in fury, yet the fire's glow grew stronger with each heartbeat, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. "Remember your hopes," Sarah shouted, her voice unwavering against their howls. "Remember all that we love." In an instant, a brilliant flash erupted from the center of their gathering, a radiant wave of warmth blasting forth, scattering the shadows like brittle leaves caught in a gust. The darkness hissed and recoiled at the radiant energy, realizing it could not bear to face the power of unyielding love. "Together!" everyone shouted, and a surge of collective purpose fueled them. The shadows shrieked louder as twisted faces writhed in rage, desperate to reclaim their grasp. But the campers stood tall, illuminating the night with their united strength. With one final surge of raw emotion, Sarah yelled, "We reject you." She tightened her hold around Ethan's hand, pulling him closer with unyielding love. "You don't own us. We are not your prisoners." In that moment of defiance, the shadows shivered, their power waning as the fire flared brilliantly, shining like a star. Sarah felt warmth spreading through her body, igniting from within, washing away the fear and replacing it with an incredible strength forged from love and connection. The darkness shuddered, losing its grip as light enveloped the campers, illuminating the night with golden brilliance. The monstrous forms twisted, shrieking as they shattered against the radiant waves, fading into oblivion. As the last echoes of despair dissipated into the air, Sarah clutched Ethan tightly, heart mirroring the calm that now settled around them. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mingling with laughter as the once haunted campers burst into joyous relief. The air crackled with victory. Did we win?" Ethan whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Yes," Sarah smiled through her tears, wonder sparkling in her eyes as she looked into her son's face, no longer shadowed by fear, but brightened by hope, and as first rays of dawn broke through the trees, illuminating a world reborn, Sarah knew this was more than just survival. This was the strength of love, light, and togetherness. "Let us go home," she said softly, feeling the warmth of the sun envelop her family and newfound friends. They turned to face the line of trees, each step embodying the collective resolution to uphold the light that had defeated the darkness within. This was their story of resilience, a tribute to love unfurled against despair. They would rise, holding on to hope, knowing they were never alone again, and finally, as they began their journey back home, a quiet assurance filled the air. The night may have harbored evil, but together, they would always find their way to the light. Now, listen up. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will leave you breathless. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the fire of creativity alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to hear everything you've been thinking, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how important your support is. Let's unleash this epic finale together.